All right, we are recording this so that we can replay later for those that wanted to see what the update was, but were not able to join us today at noon. Thank you everyone for joining us. Todd O'Hare with the Montana Chamber of Commerce, and I've got Sheridan Hoyer here, and she's also there on the screen under some other sort of an alias there. We're going to give a quick update on some of the stuff that we saw last week. This is certainly not a comprehensive review. It's just going to hit some of the high points. If there's something that we don't cover or you would like to see us cover or have questions about, we'll stop the recording when we get done giving our report, and then feel free to ask questions and we can get into a dialogue about anything that we covered or did not cover. I'll just bring up I'll just kind of bring up a couple here that fit in that kind of high profile, high priority sort of bucket for us. We saw some of the MEPA bills, the Montana Environmental Policy Act bills, move last week with hearings, all largely designed to try to address the held Supreme Court ruling, to try to see if there's some processes that we can put in place that provide some certainty and some predictability for seeking state permits in the future. And so the Montana Chamber went in, I think, on practically every MEPA bill last session or last week that was related to putting some of those sort of steps and processes in place that are predictable for the business community and the permitting community. So there was that. We had one of our bills, it's a tort reform bill that we were not able to get across the finish line in the last legislative session. It's related to statutes of limitations and real property. It's pretty weedsy, if you will, and Sheridan's done a great job of taking it out of the weeds. It is a priority, it does matter. These are the sort of things that ultimately contribute to a business climate. And so when we end the recording, if any of you want a little bit more detail on that, happy to have that sort of conversation. It's on the floor today for third reading, right? It passed relatively narrowly yesterday, 55-45. It's up for third reading today. And so the rest of the Montana Chamber folks are up there trying to hold the last of the votes for the third reading so we can see it get over to the Senate.
And just as an emphasis on the tort reform arena, we care about that because the goal is that we are limiting litigation, which in turn limits your insurance costs as a business owner. So that's the overarching goal in all
right.
This.
And I think it's also important to note in that vein is that there isn't any other organization in the state that is leaning into and taking the leadership role in tort reform. And so every legislative session, we're identifying what we would consider some of the high priority bills to try to ham in some of the litigation openings for businesses. And we don't see any other organization in the state that's doing that. So it's non-glamorous sort of work, but it is meaningful sort of work. I'll also mention that we went in and supported, there was a bill last week that Larry Brewster carried that changes the way the Public Service Commission is selected. Currently, the Public Service Commission is selected purely by election. And we believe that given the fact that the state of Montana and the entire country is headed into a massive energy shortage, that in order for us to not get ourselves back further into a corner, there's going to have to be some really thoughtful, intentional sort of decisions as it relates to energy investment in the state, particularly as it relates to the regulated side of things. And leaving that to just elected officials doesn't create a real balanced sort of approach. A better balanced approach, I think, in our mind is you have some elected officials and you have some that are appointed. And the appointed ones fit within a category of experts in finance or investment, economics, so that you've got some folks on there that you are assured that understand investment and finance and some of it, because there's a lot of that related to that. The Public Service Commission is a quasi-judicial sort of a regulatory body, which means it's very complicated, very detail oriented, And it is also one of the most obscure sort of elected positions in the state. I think it even rivals people's confusion on who to support for the Montana Supreme Court. And so what you have a tendency to see is those individuals that have the highest name recognition win those elections. And I think our contention is that a great way to
Make energy policy.
to make energy policy, especially when you're talking about millions and millions of dollars of investment as we go forward. So we went in and supported putting a little more balance in the Public Service Commission as we go forward. And then I'll just touch briefly on a couple items, and Sheridan can fill in on any sort of gaps I left. We're in a real problem or real quandary, if you will, as it relates to property taxes. There's a big movement underway. It's a big part of the session and discussion about what do we do about property taxes and the rate of increase that we've seen. Property taxes increase, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years. Currently, the only bills that are moving related to property taxes are bills that, to bluntly put it, seek to raise property taxes on one class of property taxpayers so that another class of property taxpayers may receive some sort of relief. And the further we get into the session, the more we understand about this, the more the risk that we see for the business community, the bigger danger I think that this presents to the business community, where we're creating a second class of property taxpayers in our property tax system. And I've contended through the course of several years now is that the only way that we're going to be able to offer property tax relief to property taxpayers is someone has to pay more. And that's the structure that we are operating in today. I think this thing is coming to a head. And I think at some point, I'm going to contend that we're going to have a more honest, more thorough sort of a conversation about what Montana's tax structure looks like, because as we continue to go down this road of like, how do you provide property tax relief for certain taxpayers, the pressure is going to be to put more and more pressure, more and more taxes on those large property taxpayers and those property taxpayers that that a judgment is being made that they should pay more. And I think that's a terrible way to move forward with tax policy. And so I don't know what this means for the rest of the session, but it's becoming apparent, I think, more and more apparent all the time that we're going to have to start having a more serious conversation about what we're going to do with our tax system in the state of Montana as our economy evolves and changes. And then I'll just mention on the other side of things is that March 6th, I believe it is somewhere right in there is where we hit the official halfway point of the legislative session. The big crush is coming over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks to get bills introduced, heard, passed from one chamber to the next chamber. And I'm sure you've all seen and read and heard about the turmoil that is going on over in the Senate. It's more than just kind of palace intrigue. It is affecting the way the Senate is operating. It is going to have an impact on how bills move out of the Senate in particular. There's a lot of sort of internal political strife and chaos and turmoil that continues to play out on the Senate side. And we don't know how ultimately that's going to play out from a legislative perspective, but there is going to be an impact associated with that.
Yeah, on that note, I think the last stat I heard was a week or so ago, but the House had passed double the amount of bills as the Senate thus far. And that was before Thursday and Wednesday of last week, which was a bit of the messiest time so far. And I won't get into all of the reasons there, but it's something we have to consider as we move through it.
Yeah, what else did I miss there, Sharon?
Just on our priorities, we can talk a little bit about this week. Yesterday, on the energy investment front again, we went in against the speaker's bill to provide a setback of 1.25 miles on wind turbine generators from a property line. And we're not against setbacks, but there's a lot of strife in the wind community and just energy community, and that doesn't reflect our all of the above energy strategy that we think we need for the energy economy that we're facing. On that tax point, both the Democrat and Republican proposals made it through the House floor last session, second and third reading, and they're in appropriations this week, and we are not happy with them, but also are playing some bit of the political games there to do what we can with what we have, right? We are good friends with both the sponsors of those bills, and so understanding what we need. And then on the Medicaid front, it passed the House floor, House Bill 245, that's the one we're supporting, Ed Buttry's bill, passed the House floor, second reading on Friday, third reading yesterday, with the same number of votes, a couple swaps, but the same number of votes between second and third reading. And so we're counting that as a win, but then we also have to pay attention because there's other bills, like there's one up on the Senate floor today that would end the Medicaid or phase out the Medicaid program as it currently stands. So just keeping our eyes on all of those things. The TIFs.
I would say, just stopping you for a second,
Yeah.
the win in the House on Medicaid expansion, as far as we're concerned, isn't really a surprise. I think
No.
like the big concern has always been over on the Senate. It's
Yeah.
like everyone has felt like we could get Medicaid expansion comfortably through the House. And then the tough sledding, the big fight is going to occur over on the Senate. And so nothing's really a surprise on the House side of things. We know that the heavy lift is yet to come.
Which is why we're so concerned over what's going on in the Senate and what that will turn into as far as our priorities. Yeah. We've got some work on TIFs and covenant bill on housing to ensure workforce housing stays in. I think we'll be able to support that. And childcare is still moving pretty slow. Nothing, got our bill drafted on our tax credit, but nothing introduced that we're directly supporting just yet. There's been a couple bills, but not ones that fit within our business supported lane. And I think, let's check. Oh, and then I get to go in on some career and tech ed bills tomorrow. So some funding for middle school career and technical education, and then an education credit for students volunteering in nursing homes, long-term care and childcare settings. So some good stuff there, and just keeping an eye on all the other things business related, work comp, taxes, torts, TIFs.
Yeah.